Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. And I appreciate you guys for joining me for another episode. So of course, let's continue with our Linux journey. And by now, we should have all that we need in order to get started with the next portion. And this video is going to be all about learning the commands. So we're going to dive into what a command is. We're going to learn about the three parts that make up a command. And on top of that, we're also going to be running some of these commands in our terminal so we can see what the output is and how we interface with the terminal. So by now, you should actually have your environment set up. You should already know what a terminal is. You should already know what a shell is. And you should already have played around with the operating system and got a feel for what it is. If all this stuff sounds foreign to you, there'll be links in the description where you can actually go ahead and follow some of our previous videos that we've made talking about all those things that we just described. Before we jump into learning about commands, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel with turning on your notifications so that way you don't miss out on any videos we upload to the channel. If you like the content and it's helping you out tremendously, go ahead and give me a like for the video. And lastly, don't forget to share the video with a family member or friend so that way they can continue on their Linux journey if they have started it. If not, who knows, maybe you're inspiring them. You can go ahead and possibly be the person to kick off their tech journey by sharing this video with them. So with all those things out of the way, let's jump into the commands. All right, guys, so welcome to the desktop where we're going to talk a little bit about commands today. So I have here my whiteboard up on the screen, and we're going to break down exactly what a command is, how do we run a command, and see the different parts of that command. And I apologize for my handwriting here, but I'm an engineer. Engineers never really did well with their handwriting. They always use the computer for typing. So part of the process when it comes to learning about commands, we need to learn how we break down this command. And a command is broken up into three different parts. So what do those parts look like? Number one, you actually have the command itself, right? So the actual command that you're looking to run. So the next part, and number two, is your options. So you have your options for said command. And the last part of commands is you have your arguments. So just to reiterate, we have the command, we have the options that you give the command, and then you have the arguments for that command. Now, this may sound difficult if you've never seen a command or how it even works. Don't get bogged too much by the actual terminology. We're going to go through a couple of exercises together in order to see how we apply these three steps here for running a command. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in our terminal. So if you watched our previous videos, you should already be familiar with this terminal that you see up here in the whiteboard. And keep in mind again, that this is where we're going to be typing in our commands. So let's go over an example of what a command looks like. So our first example will be the move command. And I'll put it here in green. We'll put example, and we'll call it the move command. So in the terminal, you might see something like this. All right, so now that we got the command with my really bad handwriting up on the screen, let's break this down so that way we can understand how this command actually works. So the first part of the command is the move command. And if you're not familiar with this, I'll show you later on in the video of how you can find out more information about the actual commands you're running. But in a nutshell, move is one of the most popular commands that you're going to use in Linux. And it is, of course, as you guessed it, the ability to move a file or a directory from one location to the next. And by the way, not only can you move a file or directory, this command also has the behavior of renaming a file or renaming a directory, which is another cool thing that I'm going to show you in this example. So now that we know that the move command actually moves a file or directory from one location to the next, or it can be used to rename directories or files, let's take a look at the second part, which is the options part that changed the behavior of the command. And to make things very easy, I'll go ahead and put a 1 in order to break down what part is what part. So now the second part is the -v option, and we could put a number 2 here in order to show you that this is the options part of the command. And the -v basically stands for verbose. Verbose means that, hey, tell me exactly what you're doing when you actually execute this command. And we'll take a look at exactly what this does in the terminal. So now let's move now on to part number 3 of the command. So this whole section here with ~test1 space ~test2, that's the third part of the command, and that is the arguments. And in the arguments that we have here, we're saying in our home directory, we should have a file called test1. and we're going to move the file to the same home directory, but this time I want it called test2. And this is an example of how we rename files within the Linux operating system. All right, so enough explaining it on the whiteboard. Let's actually go practice this and see what we actually get. So with our terminal up, just like we had in our example on the whiteboard, we're going to be renaming a file, and we use that doing the move command. So let's go ahead and actually type on the terminal here in our actual environment that move command. And of course, one of the things that I also will preface with this is this assumes that the file already exists. So since you are just starting out and most likely you do not have that file in your home directory, let's go ahead and create that using the touch command. And I'll explain what the touch command is a little later. So let's go ahead and type in touch ~test1. And with that single command, now you have the test1 file that is located in your home directory. Now we can utilize the command that we just did in the example on the whiteboard. But first, one of the questions you might be asking is, okay, I did the touch command. How do we even know that the file exists? How do I see that? And one of the other commands that you can use, and of course, we're going to touch on this even more later, is the ls command. So let's go ahead and type in the ls command, and we can see the file is actually located in our home directory. So as we can see here, test1 is located in our home directory. So now, as we talked about on the whiteboard example, we're interested in renaming it using the move command. So let's go ahead and type that example in as we saw in the whiteboard. First thing we're going to do is type the actual command itself. So remember part one, which is mv, which is move, the actual command. Now we're going to put in a space. Now the second part is we're going to type our options. And remember, our options change the behavior of the command. In this case, the move command. And the option that we chose earlier was the verbose option, meaning tell me exactly what you're doing. And that's utilizing the -v. So let's go ahead and put in a space now to tackle our third part of a command, which is the argument section. What are we targeting? Meaning, hey, you want me to run this command, but on what target? And specifically, the target that we're talking about here is test1 file in our home directory. And we are renaming it to test2. So let's make sure we add the arguments there. And we do that by adding tilde for our home directory, slash, and we'll call it test1. Now that is the first part of the argument. And the second part of the argument now is tilde / test2. So let's go ahead and hit enter on that. And just like that on the screen, you see the verbose option, which tells us that the move command renamed the file test1 to test2. So let's use our previous learned command, which was the ls, in order to see that this command actually did what we intended it to do. So if I type in ls, we now see test2 instead of test1. Really cool. All right, let's work on one more example so that way we can see how this works. So let's head back to our whiteboard and tackle one more example so that way you guys get a good feel of how this all comes together. So our next example will be the ls command. So how does that look on the terminal? Let's go ahead and break that down. So an example can look like ls space tilde. The command is ls. And if you're not familiar with the ls command shows you your directories or shows you the files within your current working directory. In a later video, we'll go over what a current working directory is. Now, can you tell me what the second part is for options? If you said that the tilde is the second part for options, you are absolutely wrong. So there actually isn't any options that are given to the ls command in this example, meaning that ls will run without any options. And I'll show you what that looks like. And then finally, the last part, which is tilde, that's the arguments. And as you've learned before, tilde is a shortcut to your home directory. In a nutshell, this command is saying, show me the files and the directories that are located inside of your home directory. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the actual operating system. Let's run that command in our terminal. So let's run the command that we saw in the example that we did in the whiteboard, and that was ls space tilde. And as you can see here, ls, which is the command itself, we didn't give it any options, so we didn't change the behavior of ls. And we're giving it the argument of tilde, which is our home directory. So show me the list of files and also as well directories in our home directory. So let's go back to the whiteboard now and see how giving an option changes the behavior of the ls command. So here's another example. You might have ls-l tilde. So let's break down what this actually means. ls part 1 of the command is the actual command itself. -l, which is part 2 of a command, that is the options, right? And that option changes the behavior of ls, and that stands for long list. And then tilde, which is the last part here, this is part 3, which is your arguments. If we put all this together, show me a long list of all the files and directories in my home directory. It actually shows you a little bit more information than what you would get in the previous example. So let's run that in the terminal and see what we actually get now. So on our terminal, we're going to do ls space -l, and we have that for long list, space tilde. So remember, we have our full command now, ls, which is the first part, which is the command itself. The second part, which is the -l, which tells the command how to change the behavior. And then the last part is the arguments. What are we trying to target? So give me a long list of directories and files within our home directory, which is the tilde part. So let's run that and see what we get. So as you can see on the screen, we get a very different response from what we got in our previous ls example. And as you can see here, you're starting to see a long list of what we talked about before using the -l option. And it gives us all kinds of information that you didn't see in this previous example. And in a much later video, we'll talk about what all this stuff actually means. But for now, just know that, as you can see, giving those options adjusts the behavior of the command itself. Pretty cool. We just learned about what a command is, how it's broken up into 3 different parts, and how to actually run those commands inside of your terminal. Now, we talked about a couple of commands. We talked about, number 1, the touch command. We talked about the ls command, and we talked about the cd command. So there was 3 commands that we actually ran in this tutorial. Now, there's something very important that I do want to show you, and it's how do you get help? How do we know what these commands actually do? What are the options that are associated with these commands? And this is where the man pages come in a Linux operating system. Man pages are pages that are built into the operating system that will help you with your commands that you're typing on the terminal. And they give you all the details that you need to know about what the command does, what are the options that it needs, and several other pieces of information that are vital to the success of using that command. So let's jump into the terminal and use the man pages in order to figure out what the 3 commands that we use today are. So first command that we used was the touch command. So on the terminal, we type in man, M-A-N, space, and we type in touch for the touch command that we used earlier and hit enter. And as you can see, you get a quick synopsis here. And the quick synopsis tells us that the touch command changes file timestamps. So as you can see here, the touch command updates the file timestamps. And one actually interesting thing about the touch command is if the file does not exist, it actually creates the file and updates the file timestamps. And of course, you can scroll up and down. And as you can see here, there's many different options with the touch command. As an example, if we want to change only the modification time, we give it the -m option. But once you're done viewing this man page, and you want to go ahead and escape out of it, as you can see in the bottom here, it says Q to quit. And let's take a look now at the man page for the move command. So let's go ahead and type man space MV for move. And as you can see here, the move command allows you to move files or directories, or you can actually use the move command in order to rename files or directories, which is quite interesting. And in the man pages, it even tells you how to use it. So as an example, right, we talked about the 3 parts of the commands. Here's the first part, move, which is the command itself. Then you go into what your options are, and your options are listed here below. As you can see here, the options is the second part. And then the last part, which was the arguments, and you saw us do the arguments of source and destination. So all that is listed in the man page. So go ahead and take a moment to read about the move command. Once you're done reading, go ahead and hit Q for quit. And let's take a look real quickly at the last one, which was man space ls. And as you can see here, ls lists directory contents. And in order to use the ls command, you have the first part, which is the command itself, ls, then the second part, which is the options itself. And the options are all listed here with a dash. So as an example, If we want to use the -L command, which is what we used previously, the -L command stands for use a long list format. Now, the last part of the ls command is the argument, and the argument is either a file or a directory. So once you're done reading the man page for the ls command, go ahead and hit Q for quit. And just like that, you actually utilize 3 different commands in order to create a file, you renamed a file, and you actually listed the contents of a directory to see that you actually did those changes. And you also learned about man pages to figure out how do you go about learning how to get help on specific commands. All right, guys, so that wraps up this video on commands and how do we run those commands. Not only how do we run those commands, but you also learned how to look up man pages. So that is the pages that help you learn about the commands and gives you all the details about them, AKA how to get help when you're using Linux. So now the next part in your journey, I'm going to link in the description and also as well, I'm going to link in the video, the top 10 Linux command. So go ahead and watch that video. Make sure you utilize what you learned in this video and also as well in that video to understand how to run those top 10 commands. Utilize the man pages against those commands so you can understand in details what those commands actually do. And don't forget, we're also working on an environment for you to test out your knowledge. So stay tuned for that. Links will be put in the description once it becomes available. So that'll do it for this video. If you found the video to be helpful, don't forget to give me a like, turn on your notifications, and make sure you hit that bell so that way you're notified whenever we upload new videos to the channel. And lastly, don't forget to share this video with a family member or friend. If they're interested in learning about Linux, you can possibly kick off their tech journey and help them get into tech, or you can possibly introduce them into something that they've never learned in their journey before. So I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.